Good morning. Welcome back. What an invigorating morning. It is. I feel my spirit is uplifted. My name is Helen Peng. I'm the Chief HR and Communications Officer for Sun Life International Hubs. I will be your moderator for the next session. Through all the speakers, we feel there are so many opportunities and possibility to do cross-border business in Hong Kong, in mainland China, in Canada, and across the globe. So our next session is really about doing cross-border business through strong partnerships. I have two amazing panelists with me. So I'm gonna do a little bit introduction to share who they are. Then I'm gonna ask some very easy questions. And of course, we'll always leave some questions, Q&A sessions for the live audience. So let's get it begin. First of all, let me introduce Albert. So I wanna make it right. So Albert Yu is the Asia CEO for BMO, Bank of Montreal Financial Group, where he oversees all of BMO's business in the region across capital markets and wealth management. His career spans across US, Canada, Latin America, and with most recent 12 years in Beijing, which is Asia regional headquarters for BMO. Albert is the president of BMO China Co. and serves on the board of directors. I actually have asked both panelists to share some fun facts with me, because I know we all want to get to know a person as a human being besides a successful business leaders, right? So about Albert, some fun fact. He has 5 children. That's fine. Some were born in Canada, some were born in US, speaking of cross-border partnerships. All of them living in US right now. And he is a big fan of Disney. So make a wild guess. How many times he and his family have visited Disney? 20. Another guess? Okay, so I'll take in between 30, but it's already a big number. And he owns Disney stock. So we know how he funded his children's educational tuition, right? So let's welcome Albert.
Thank you.
Next to Gordon Lam. Gordon has more than 30 years of working experience with HSBC Group, specializing in credit risk management and global banking. He spent part of his career in Hong Kong, US, and UK, as well as mainland China for 18 years. He served as the vice chair and chief executive of Hang Seng Bank, China, and managing director of HSBC Bank, China. Retired in 2019, but he's still very active. He's currently the independent director of BMO China Co., and he served as independent director on the board of Ant Bank in Hong Kong and Hang Seng Shanghai Fund Management. You want to know some fun fact about Gordon? Who has heard? Yeah, oh, McMillan, you know that, right? So Gordon Lam, how many of you know this movie star? Oh, Alex, yes. In fact, for those who are online, probably can see this. So I Googled Gordon Lam. So this is Gordon Lam. You can see some resemblance, right? So maybe after the conference, Gordon will be asked for autographs. Well, I cannot comment on his acting skills, but I can definitely comment on his cross-border experiences in business. So let's get the show started. First, I'm gonna ask some generic question. Maybe I'm gonna invite both Albert and Gordon to share some general background of BMO and some of your past experiences. Albert, over to you.
Great, Helen, thank you for the introduction. Now, how come I didn't get that movie star analogy? I thought I looked like Brad Pitt, do I?
You do.
Well, thank you for the kind introduction. Maybe before I talk about BMO, about Disney, First, a couple updates. If anyone owned Disney here, you know what happened to them in the last 2 years in the stock price. But I actually looked it up last night about, if I'm going to talk about Disney, what was the purchase price of the first Disney share I bought? $14. It closed at 98 last night. It's gone as high as 190. I bought some at 130, so that was a mistake. But to round out this part, 50% of my kids' education fund at the get-go, at the purchase price, was from Disney stock. So I got money left over because tuition fee, University of Toronto, and my eldest kid went to UT, and it's not, it's world-class university, but it's not world-class tuition, right? So that's that. And second, 30 times like way under. A piece of information, one of my son, my second son, now work for Disney. I actually go to Disney free. And every time he's around, we would just go at 8 o'clock just to do one ride 5 times. All right, enough about me. Let's talk a little bit about BMO. And I realized that, actually I didn't know we have a video, so it's great. Check all the boxes. It's better than what I know about BMO, but it's good. BMO is a bank of 206 years of history. So I know I have a lot of good friends here from Canadian Bank. This is at least one thing. We're the first bank of Canada, and we used to be a central bank. And I think you probably all know about that. So we are big, but not super big. $1 trillion is a lot of assets, but banks nowadays are running at trillions of dollars. So it's not something we brag about, but what we want to talk about is our history here. We're here in Hong Kong. We're here talking about connecting, growing, and partnership. So we started in 1817, and our first transaction with China was in 1818. It's a trade finance transaction we put together from an exporter in Guangdong. They exported something to Boston. And that cost at the time 160,000 silver coins. And I don't know how big were those coins. We have to use one of those carts with horses to get from Montreal to Boston to actually pay with 160,000 silver coins. It's in our archive. It's amazing. So think about China, Canada, United States. We linked them up 205 years ago. Fast forward 1960, when China was in a very terrible and tragic famine, Canada, based on humanitarian reasons, decided to go against the international view at the time and decided to sell agri product to China. BMO was proudly appointed to provide the funding with some government guarantee. And the counterparty we transacted with is actually the predecessor company of today's COFCO Group. Guess what? Today, BMO has a joint venture with COFCO Group on a trust company called COFCO Trust. And when did we close that deal? Exactly 50 years from that LC. And when I first met the chairman of COFCO, Mr. Ning Gao Ning, he brought it up about what took you guys so long. I've been waiting for 50 years. It's a good joke. Talking about connecting, growing, and partnership. Fast forward a little bit, you have seen it. We have a vision where we said we boldly grow the good in business and in life. Great corporate slogan. I think many great companies have fancy slogan like us. But look deeper into it. I think when we look into that, today's theme is about connection, it's about growing, it's about partnership. That's one thing we do in our vision too, as we boldly grow the good in business and life. It's not just about making money. In life, it's about where we live, our community. Of course, all companies would have an ambition to not just in business, but to make life better in the local community. One thing we also see while we do many efforts around the region to help out the locals would be we believe in connecting people to people by way of sharing with people what we have done in business. We've done a business that makes sense. We're behind a piece of green financing. We're behind a community project. We may make a little bit money, but we want to make sure back home with 37 million Canadian, we want them to know about it. Because by way of average Canadian knowing about it, maybe the average people in Hong Kong and in mainland China would know about that too. And we would chip in a little bit to connect people to people. And in the long run, people to people is what matters in terms of building relationship and making this world a better place. So we believe also this is part of our mission to share with people what we're doing, hopefully all good, and we want people to know about it. In this day and age, I think it's important to speak up about what we're doing here in this part of the world, sharing with people across Canada. I'm excited in Hong Kong, meeting some old friends and new friends, Ambassador May, Rachel, Philip, JC, hello, Jason, and many others, Canadian-related companies or Canadian companies here. It's great to be with the Chamber organizing this event, and I'm glad to be here, and I'd love to share more about what I know with you in the next few minutes.
Well, thank you so much, Albert. You know, when you talk about BMO has over 200 history, it's a legend. You know, and you also talk about connecting people to people is so important to doing business. We're gonna have a great opportunity for the audience here. Mark your calendar, May 20th. We have an annual ball, and the theme is House of Legends. And we're aiming to connecting people to people and bring business together. Just a little unsolicited plug-in. Gordon, why don't you also share with us some of your cross-border business experiences?
Okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah, good morning, everyone. I must admit that I don't know much about acting. I probably know a bit more about how to act as a banker. And before I start, I probably would like to add a caveat that I'm not representing HSBC here. I just want to share with you some of my previous experience while working in HSBC and in Hang Seng in Hong Kong. I think for all the people sort of sitting here, you know, without introduction, you know well about HSBC and Hang Seng. Both are leading financial institutions in Hong Kong and have been here for a long time and very much a local bank and cover a wide range of services offering to individuals, SME and corporate financial institution, you name it, basically everything for everyone in Hong Kong. When it comes to China, it's a quite different story. HSBC is a foreign bank, quote unquote foreign, or Hang Seng, even Hang Seng, despite it's locally incorporated, is also considered as a foreign bank in China. So they can't sort of really provide service to all people everywhere in China, right? As you all know, China is a huge country. So it needs to be sort of somewhat different. And HSBC very much tried to play a role as, I say, a niche player. But I think similar to BMO, HSBC have a long history in China. HSBC, the previous successor would be called Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation. It was incorporated in 1865, not as old as BMO, slightly younger. And they set up the branches in Hong Kong and Shanghai the same year. That's what the names are coming from. And in China, I think HSBC have some sort of leading edge. On one hand, similar to BMO's story, HSBC is quite proud of the fact that they have never closed in China, even in a very difficult period like Cultural Revolution. Staff is still employed in Shanghai, picking up letters, addressing to HSBC, and maintain that contact, with the outside world, and maintaining the contact with the locals, contact as well. So that is something they're really proud of. And when China, we opened this store back in 1980s. HSBC is one of the 4 foreign banks have been granted the right to reestablish in Shanghai, set up a branch. And since then, they have a very conscious policy is to keep pace with all the policy relaxations. As you know, when China sort of start to reopen the store, foreign bank cannot do many things. So once there's the opportunity to for foreign institution to establish or develop business in China, HSBC have a conscious policy is to enter into new territories. Of course, behind that, you need a lot of commitments. You need to put in the time, resources, especially when the market is still quite immature. But the benefit of it is that it helped the bank to have a good communication with the regulators, with the local authority, and try to set the rules for the newly developed market. And I think that probably is one of the advantage that HSBC as a first mover in the market. And I think second point is that HSBC, unlike the situation in Hong Kong, and try to sort of pay to this strength, we are not trying to be, or HSBC is not trying to be doing all sorts of things for China. And when I work in global bankings in China, one of my mission and visions is to be the international bank for local clients and to be the local bank for international clients. Okay. So when there's a foreign company coming to China, that we try to serve them as the bank of choice. And similarly, if the PRC client is going out of China to wherever they go, we want to be their bank of choice. At that time, HSBC got sort of like presence in something like 80 countries, and now it's down to about 60, right? And I read recently that HSBC have sold its Canadian operation. So in future, if you have interest relating to Canada, probably you should talk to BMO and talk to Albert. So I think that is also an important aspect that HSBC tried to sort of stand out from the crowd. And the third point I really want to make is that a partner, going back to the issue, I think partnership is always important. HSBC have adopted two-pronged approach. On one hand, they try to grow their wholly owned subsidiary in China, HSBC China. At the same time, they also invest in a number of strategic partners, including Bank of Communications, Peng Insurance, Bank of Shanghai in the past, and also Hang Seng have invested in Industrial Bank, etc. So the two-pronged approach, I think, served the group quite well. If you look at the latest financial release by the group for 2022, HSBC China make about $1 billion profit onshore, and then the investments in China contribute about $2.3 billion. So it's quite a sizable sum, quite a significant sum. I reckon majority of them coming from Bank of Communications. I think there's a beauty of having a strategic partners in China, which helps you a lot, I think, at least in three aspects. First, it helps you to better understand the local market as they are locals, right? They know the local environments much better. And also, I think they probably have the local contact that you can take on. Yeah, they have the network, and it's quite difficult for a foreigner to re-establish the same network in a huge country like China. So riding on the local partner is quite important. And also, I think it's quite important, or the third point would be very much provide you with the scale. For business, I think the scale is quite important. And also one of the attraction of China is the scale of the market. And I think the local partner can help you with that, to build up the scale and to make the business overall profitable and make more commercial sense. At the end of the day, making more money. So I think these are the sort of important element that we need to sort of bear in mind. I think that's about it. Hopefully it's not too long.
Well, thank you, Gordon. And I particularly like when you talk about the HSBC mission, right? To be the local partner for international, but international partner for locals. I think that's really connecting both China side and the international side. That's beautiful. And by the way, when I visit Beijing, I think I'm gonna have 2 more new friends to visit. That's right. So let's come to Q&A session. The first question, Albert. You know, a lot of the financial institutions from Canada, they have their regional headquarters, either in Hong Kong or in Singapore. And BMO strategically placed that in Beijing. Can you share a little bit the rationale behind that and what's some of the benefit?
Well, thank you. First, I did not decide on that. And it's nothing to do with Beijing duck. Well, it's all come back to our strategy. I think Gordon phrased it very well, and that's why he's in my board advising us too. It's all about connecting. So we in BMO, we said we boldly grow the good in business and life. In Asia, we do that by connecting the market we operate with Canada and where else we operate. BMO's bigger franchises in Canada and United States. Actually, we closed the Bank of the West acquisition about 4 weeks ago. So our Canadian business and our US business are now equal in size. Although we are probably the most entrenched Canadian bank in both the United States and in mainland China. So we thought about the connection. We thought about we need to grow, invest and grow. And we thought about partnership. As Gordon phrased it right, we don't know everything of what we need to know in a very large market. And China as a market is also a transitioning market. It's not a mature market. Rules are changing. The market's shifting. Policies are ongoing. It's been changing for 40 years, and it might keep changing for another 40. So Beijing is where decision-making is. And we know that the central government's decision-making will impact not just China and Hong Kong, but the rest of Asia. And understanding what's going on there is complicated. Building relationship is difficult from afar. We've spoken with very senior official, actually at the time, the central leadership at the time, about the idea of putting the Asia headquarters in Beijing. Obviously, very warm welcome. But we thought it makes sense. We want to put our foot on the ground in places where we need to understand most. We don't need to put a lot of boots on the ground in places where we understand already a lot. And Beijing is a place we need to understand the most. And that's where you drive where the trend of the market is. When you have issues and problems, that's how it got resolved. It affects our entire operation throughout Asia and back into our head office. So Beijing is the headquarters, and we have offices across, obviously in Hong Kong and Shanghai and Guangzhou, Tokyo, Singapore, and a number of rep offices around the region. And Hong Kong play a critical role. A lot of my peers, they are in Hong Kong, and sometimes we talk about, well, you're pretty lonely in Beijing, and say, well, maybe, but I'm in Hong Kong almost every month. But Hong Kong play an equally important role because China capital markets is ring-fenced. Hong Kong is the gateway into a giant market. So you want to serve Chinese customer, you better be good in Hong Kong, right? Look at, and my friends and my bankers' friends in Hong Kong probably know, right? All the major Chinese state-owned enterprises, they must have a tertiary center in Hong Kong, right? Maybe the decision makers in Beijing or Shanghai, but where stuff getting done is in Hong Kong. So we have a lot of relationship pull in a place in Beijing, but we have a lot of execution capability in Hong Kong. And obviously, when our clients need to go out to the world, and we're competing with HSBC, who's very big, right? We need to play on our strength. So we need to be in places where our clients need to be, right? So we're in, example, we're in mergers where the company is in Shandong province. We go to Shandong a lot, right? And they need to acquire an asset in Latin America, because earlier years it was Canada, but now it's a little more challenging, so it's now Latin America. But they need to manage the offshore financings and risk management through Hong Kong. So whoever can pick this, I call it the 3 corners of the triangle, whoever can do a better job to be in sync in those 3 dots, you get the business. We have strong competitors, and that's how we win business. And if there are places we couldn't be doing well in all 3 places, We don't want to compete. We don't want to deliver a substandard service to our clients. We've done deal where there is an asset in Africa. We have actually good intelligence in certain African countries. Canada, we know a lot. So would be our other Canadian competitors. But it doesn't need to be a high-profile acquisition deal. It could be a simple trade finance deal, right? It could be a wealthy individual whose business is in Shanghai, and they typically set up big, wealthy accounts in Hong Kong, sometimes Singapore, but their family might be in Canada, in Vancouver. It happened a lot. So how do you line up a Vancouver banker with a Hong Kong banker, with a Shanghai banker? Whoever can do that better wins the game. I think that's the essence of when we said we boldly grow the good by connecting our clients with the rest of the world. It's easy to say, and for those in the business, you know it's not easy to do. You need everything to be totally in sync to earn the business. And that explains why we put the headquarters in Beijing, because we think that's the most difficult piece of the triangle.
I love that answer. You know, you want to know the market, you don't know much, right? You put your strategic folks to learn about the business, build a local partnership. And I also like when you said it really need the people on the ground who understand the culture to have the relationship that can help the business. And by the way, I think Beijing Duck is already pretty successful in cross-border businesses on everybody's table across the globe, right? So it might be a determining factor. Thank you, Albert. Gordon, you talk about the HSBC experience and Hang Seng experience in Beijing, in China. Can you share some of the success stories and maybe also highlight some challenges?
Certainly there's a lot of challenges. You see, I got more gray hair. I think China is still very much a mixed economy, right? The invisible hand and the visible hand always working hand in hand. So you have to, on one hand, sort of deal with all the regulators and how to open up sort of more opportunity for foreign institutions, be it banks or other industry. And at the same time that you need to deal with the domestic market. So I think there's a number of challenges. Apart from the sort of government side, I think there are two other aspects that are quite important as well. I would say the first one would probably is to build up the resources. Resources in a broader sense, but I think the core of it is the human capital. It's the people that you need to train and retain. That is quite important. This is very much the core team that you build up if you really want to have an impact in the China market or in a foreign country. And secondly, I would say is very much to face the local competition. I recall in the past when we have the local training arrangements with Bank of Communication, HSBC is supposed to teach Bank of Communication how to do banking. But then after a while, then we found we probably have more to learn from them than we can teach them. The local competition is becoming quite fierce. And I think today, one of the biggest challenges to many foreign companies would be how to face the domestic competition as they have geared up a lot. So I think these days that probably we need to sort of bring in, setting aside the sort of international connectivity, is to how to bring in the international best practice into the market and try to compete with the local competitor. Of course, there's also areas, as I said, you can work with your partners and try to make the business more sensible and profitable in China as well. So there's a lot of challenges happening every day. But the interesting thing is that I would say China is still, especially in the financial sector, there's still area that they have yet to be improved. Well, for instance, interest rate have not been fully sort of liberalized, and there's still a lot of aspect has been sort of highly governed by the government. So I do see there's a potential for liberalization and for cross-border cooperations. And I see those areas that probably foreign company or foreign bank can contribute more. And maybe one point I really want to add is that if you look at the market share situation, the foreign bank certainly do better in the cross-borders area for instance, in international trade, in global markets. And I see another big potential would be very much on the retail side of business, like wealth management, insurance. I think these are the areas probably China is still lagging behind compared with the rest of the world for various reasons. And there could be business opportunity for foreign banks to take.
Well, thank you, Gordon. You did mention in China market is still a lot of rules and regulations to be navigated around. For those people who want to do business in China, can maybe both of you share some of the key pointers, how we navigate around in those environments?
Do you have the secret sauce? We're all looking for it. I mentioned earlier that it's a transitioning market, right? When you're in a transitioning, I didn't use the term emerging, because some part of the market is not emerging, it's already emerged, but it's a transitioning one. That means rules are changing. Don't forget the few things, right? We all here know China very well. We know that it's a state-run economy by and large. When you combine a transitioning market and a state-run economy, that means you need to pay attention to what the state is doing. It affects every aspect of the entire economy. I think your question is about what are the things we need to look out. I think I would first say is for global companies, don't bring in just your global strategy, because most of the time you're going to be hitting the wall. You need an adapted global strategy, and adaptation is ongoing. It's like every year, you have to adjust. You have to adjust based on how the transition is happening. I think that's first. And second, don't assume when you have a great product that Chinese would like it, right? So we all know that. It's easy to say, it's not easy to do, right? Sometimes we put our head in the sand. My product is the absolute best in the world. Why wouldn't they like it, right? And it happened all the time. We do that in BMO too. Like, why wouldn't they do that, right? The reality is it's different. You need to adjust and you need to adapt. So I think that is key. Who could do that better? And also, personally, I believe in this transitional market, you have to stay close to your clients, the government policymakers, the regulators, depending what business you're in, and your peers. What are they doing? For good reason, and sometimes to avoid getting into problems. When I said stay close, I mean like next block. I didn't mean 3-hour flight. We have cases where, and we did something, it was like everybody is doing the same thing. The rule is kind of a little transitioning, I keep using the term, because it's transitioning. What something might work great at one point, 3 years later might not. I actually have a case where my entire peer group in the entire banking industry is doing exactly what I'm doing. And in a few years, where's everybody else? They all moved on because things change. And we become the only one doing it. And then we got the phone call about, why are you doing that? And they said, well, everybody's doing the same thing. Oh, no, you're the only one. And we say, oh, you wake up, right? So client demand, how things are done, they all you need to stay on top very much, a lot more than I would have been in Canada, right? Canadian banking rules, they don't really change for a long time, right? And OSFI is pretty clear, A, B, C, D, E, tough, but you know the rules. Also, another point I want to bring for doing business in China would be making sure the local team have enough empowerment. Because things will be different from head office for us foreign companies. And for us, it's a constant piece of work, right? And empowerment, doing it right, means you can make better decisions. But not doing it right would mean you make the wrong decision. It's a fine balance of how much you're empowered. And empowerment sometimes is earned, not given. So I would share this with you. It's over the years, that's what I learned, is to earn the trust from your shareholders to do what you believe is right for that market that fit into your global company's direction. I think that's also important.
Well, those are excellent insight. Thank you, Albert. Particularly, we have to adapt our global strategy to the local market and customize to the client needs. So that's excellent. And local empowerment, I love that as well. Gordon, anything else to share on that front?
Yeah, I think I would just like to endorse Albert's early comments that come to Hong Kong first if you want to tap China market, because I think Hong Kong do have a lot of talent, a lot of expertise, a lot of good and bad experience in dealing with China. So I think you certainly can help you to look at the China market as a potential. And Hong Kong, I think, is still the best gateway to China, especially to foreigners who probably less familiar with the China market. And I think there's the latest development also quite interesting would be the GBA. I think, yeah, Alex had mentioned. GBA could well be a great potential for a lot of international company as well as those companies who are based in Hong Kong. Because I do see that probably will be where Hong Kong's futures lies. Hong Kong market in some way is quite saturated. And I think one area that probably Hong Kong can expand more is going to GBA. And I'm hopeful that the GBA can be developed closer to Hong Kong as an international, well, try to adopt more internationally recognized norms and means, which on one hand can facilitate foreigners operating in GBA, and also can become a shining example for China, for the rest of China, to how to make business more friendly and can be more conducive to the local economic growth. Yeah. So I think China market, all in all, is not for the faint-hearted. You do need to put in a lot of research and effort to understand the market and try to develop it. Although the reward, well, I think the reward can be quite handsome, but at the same time, you do need a lot of time and effort.
I can definitely feel your advocacy for Hong Kong, right? Come to Hong Kong first. And Albert, you also mentioned when we do business here in Beijing, I come to Hong Kong, there's talent, there's capabilities. So can you maybe share a little bit on the BMO's footprint and in which segment you have in China and Hong Kong, and how these are aligned with your North American franchise?
Yeah, I touched on it a little bit earlier. So in terms of where we are, we have 5 operating offices, Beijing, Hong Kong, Shanghai, Guangzhou, Singapore, all have the ability to serve our strategy. We opened a small office in Tokyo, a licensed security companies, and a number of rep offices. We also have 2 joint ventures in mainland China. One is a mutual fund company named Fugo Asset Management. Our partners are Haitong Securities and Shenwan Securities, very successful, $280 billion AUM, 46 million customers, very much top in the top 10 in, I think it's closer to top 5 now in China. We also have a joint venture with COFCO Group, who's, as you know, is a very sizable state-owned agri company on a trust company called COFCO Trust. And just want to mention this, actually, I'm on the board of the company, and it's a very interesting learning experience for me, understanding how state-owned enterprise work from within. And not only learning about how it works, not only about making a good return on that investment, and we also help the company, because it's a younger company, it's only got about $40 billion AUM, to transition itself in a transitioning market. For those who might not know, the trust industry in China gone through 2 big rounds of reshuffling, shutting down, consolidations, and some scandals and stuff. And we're very proud in BMO that we helped the company to transition well. And I think 4 years ago, the company was awarded the best in risk management in the entire industry. And pointedly, the regulator gave BMO some credits. That was very nice. But I want to add one point too. We talk a lot about our social responsibility. One part of what that trust company does, and we're proud of in BMO, was that we help farmers. The evergreen market in China is very fragmented. There's not enough of big industrialized farms. They're all medium, small size little shops. We help them to standardize. Well, they help them to standardize. We help through COFCO Trust to provide a source of fund, standardizing, securitizing the entire vertical chain. And the trust company has a great brand name, and some of you might know if you go to a supermarket, maybe less so in Hong Kong, but you walk around mainland China, you see the COFCO logo on food. It's okay. So think about that for an investment product, right? So anyway, so BMO's approach, you talked about how we operate, is both growing organically. We have an incorporated bank in mainland China. It's a fully licensed, all-inclusive bank, but we don't do retail business. We grow that. We have an investment banking boutique. And we also grow through our various branches in the region. I mentioned Hong Kong is a key hub we have, not only for Southeast Asian customers, but also for the offshore needs of Chinese customers. And that's formed part of the triangle I talked about, linking back to our core franchise in other parts of the world in North America. And I repeat the line I said, on this 3-point of the triangle, we have to do it well in all 3 at the same time to outcompete our competitors. Thank you.
Thank you. I know I still have a lot of questions, but I do recognize we have only a couple minutes left, and I want to offer the audience the opportunity to ask Albert and Gordon some questions. So I'm going to open the floor to the audience. Yes. Yes, please.
Hi. Hey, Andrew Work. Given the current political climate, I'm wondering how often you talk to headquarters and what strategies you're deploying right now to manage the idea that you want to keep your head down and get the business done. You want to maintain good relationships in China, but you also need to address concerns back in Canada that banks and other businesses could be used as a channel for activities that could harm Canada's national interests and security. Like I said, how often do you talk to headquarters about this, and what are the strategies that you're deploying for managing all 3 of those? I mean, HSBC sold out of Canada. Maybe they decided they couldn't handle the heat. What is BMO doing in that regard?
Well, a short answer is you look at the number of night calls I have, you will quit. No, I'm kidding. Very frequently, not just on strategy, but in all aspects. When Globe and Mail print an article, something about bad in China, I got loads of emails the next morning, right? So we live in special time. I think we are primarily, we are banker. We have our corporate value. There are things we would do. There are certain things we don't do. So internally, in terms of conducting our business, we absolutely uphold what is expected of a Canadian large company. No question about it. In terms of communicating with head office, there are always queries. I think our top level executives understand the market very well and sometimes can see through, depending what newspaper you read, what's right, what's wrong. Our group CEO and our head of capital market, they sometimes talk about when they were young, they did some of the first Chinese IPOs running around the country. So I'm lucky and fortunate that that top layer of executive, they are experienced Canadian bankers who understand what's right, but also understand what to do in China. When it comes down 1, 2 level lower, then more people rely only on newspapers. So we have our role is to make sure we do 2 things. Number 1, facts are channeled towards head office, not just at the senior executive, but below, which is actually more important because they kind of form the general opinion within the corporation. And number 2, I mentioned earlier that things we do, we want people to know. We are in a climate that we could be doing a lot of good things, but this is the climate that people say, maybe let's not talk about it. This is something that we work on, I will work on hard, that we do good things, we want to talk about it. We help our farmers by way of us going through our joint venture doing business. We want people to know about it, right? I know Fang sitting here, my CEO, done a lot of work that's helping our poor communities. We want people to know about it. But also proud about doing our business that are good business that help to connect people in Canada and this part of the world. And Gordon mentioned it right. Hong Kong is a very important connector of the rest of China with the rest of the world. We need to leverage on that because that's kind of a halfway stop. But it's a constant battle. To answer your question, it's not easy. One approach I take is people have a lot of questions, from simple question like where is renminbi going to go to difficult question about have you been to Xinjiang. So I would invite external experts to talk to my folks back home because just Albert, you talking about it, it's just not good enough. We need external party, some with Chinese background, some with Canadian or North American background. And if they both share the same view, then maybe it's a good opinion to consolidate on. So that's the approach I take. So we would actually have consultants working for us, economists working for us to deliver where are we in the housing market. If you read one newspaper, it's already collapsed. If you read another one, it's not. So we would have external parties talking about it.
Thank you very much. We're at time. I know we have a lot of other questions. We can always find ways to communicate with Albert and Gordon. On behalf of Canadian Chambers Organizational Committee, I want to thank both of you for being a fantastic panelist and sharing so much insight and experience in doing cross-border business across China and Hong Kong and the rest of the world. So please give a round of applause to the two panelists. Thank you.